Joining us tonight by phone is Marsha Coyle of the National Law Journal. Marsha, thank you for being here. Tell us, what do you think Scalia's single most important contribution to the court of the law has been?
Well, I'll tell you, I really believe that Justice Scalia was a leader of conservative legal thought, not just on the Supreme Court, but also off the bench. And in particular, he revitalized, brought to the fore to the public as well as to judges and lawyers his belief in originalism as a way of interpreting the Constitution. He looked at the Constitution's text and he discerned the meaning of the Constitution, not in terms of the original intent of the framers, but from what the words meant or were understood to mean at the time of the writing. And he has, by taking that approach, he has sensitized all of the justices on the bench who would not call themselves originalists to at least look first at the words of the Constitution and what the meaning was at the time they were written. And I think that has been a tremendous contribution that he will be known for.
Were there specific areas of the law where he was most influential or a leader on the court?
Yes. First of all, he led something of a revolution on the court in terms of the meaning of the Sixth Amendment confrontation clause. And as you know, that's the clause that says a criminal defendant has the right to confront his or her accusers. And he believed that is exactly what it means. It means that whoever actually tests the DNA has to show up in the courtroom to testify to the results of that DNA test. You couldn't use a surrogate. You've got to have the right person on the witness stand. He also reinvigorated the role of juries as fact finders. There were times in certain cases where judges would decide facts, but he said that had always been the role of the jury, and in a series of decisions on the court made that clear. So I think those areas he will be known for as well. In fact, he often used to joke that because of those rulings, he could be a criminal defendant's best friend.
And can you tell us, how does his death affect the cases that are currently pending?
Well, that's a very good question. As you know, there are 9 justices. With his death, there are 8. And there are cases that many of us expect would be decided by a divided vote if he were still on the bench, perhaps 5-4. Very high-profile, high-stake, controversial issues before the court this term, like abortion, immigration, cases involving redistricting, unions. With his death, there are 8 justices remaining, and whether he has actually voted on those cases already, some of those cases have not even been argued yet. It sets up a situation where you have 8 justices and the possibility of 4-4 splits, which means that a lower court's decision stands if the court divides 4-4. So there are things that are going to have to be worked out as the justices go forward now without Justice Scalia on the bench.
Great. And just very briefly now, how could this vacancy created by his death affect the balance of the court?
Well, that's just what I hinted at a little bit. As I said, right now the court is divided ideologically 5-4. You have 5 justices who are appointed by Republican presidents. You had 4 justices appointed by Democratic presidents. With Justice Scalia's death, we now have the 4-4 split. The vacancy would be a very controversial, high-profile vacancy. A lot depends on what the Senate's wishes are at this point. Will President Obama try to fill that vacancy as soon as possible? He would be filling one of the conservative splits. Since he is a Democrat, if he wanted to get through someone who was a liberal or a moderate liberal, that could shift the balance of the court. There are a lot of unknowns right now. We're going to just have to wait and see. I would also like to say something about Justice Scalia in general. I know that many of his dissents were very caustic and sometimes stinging, and people wondered, did the other justices take offense at some of the language he used? And the truth is, he was widely liked on the bench, and they did not take those dissents personally. He was a very colorful writer. And in person, and I did interview him several times in person, he was always a consummate gentleman. He could be very funny. And so I think he is going to be missed very much by his colleagues on the court, especially Justice Ginsburg, with whom he had a special friendship. They called each other their own best friends on the Supreme Court and did many things together, going to operas. They even visited India together and rode elephants together, which shows that you can bridge great divides when the divides are either political, ideological, or intellectual.
All right. Marsha Coyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Take care.